All right. It's 1 o'clock. What's going on? I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez. And today, my guest, is a guest, a continuing series of artists we've had on with our connection with the LaGuardia Fine Art Gallery and its director, Professor Dina Pizzarello, is Henry. And Henry, I didn't get your last name is Louris. Is that correct?
Yeah, Louris is correct. Yes.
And you're currently exhibiting your work at here in the gallery at the college. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, like I said, we've had a string of artists on. I guess Dina's getting a lot of shows in as we get to the end of the academic calendar, at least before the summer. And we usually start the show asking our guests to tell us a little bit about themselves. So you want to tell us a little bit about your background, your studies, where you're from, things like that?
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Henry Louris. I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I guess I've been doing some form of art throughout my life, but I got really serious about it in high school, thanks to a really wonderful professor that kind of cultivated my love for the medium. Then I went to Boston University, got a BFA in painting and printmaking, double major, and a minor in art history. And then since I've been in Connecticut, my family moved to Connecticut while I was in college, and I've just been, on the open call circuit, just submitting to shows, hoping to put my work in shows that'll take me. I was lucky enough to come across an opening for a show at LaGuardia, I believe through Art Jobs website. It was one of Dina's listings, and we hit it off right away. She seemed to enjoy the work. She was really kind. And yeah, now I have a bunch of paintings up, I believe, in the E building, and a bunch of drawings and prints in the M building, I believe, is the buildings that those are.
Excuse me. Between allergies and my dumplings I ate today with the spicy sauce, struggling today.
Aren't we all at this point? The pollen is bad right now. Yeah.
I was going to say, where are you in Connecticut?
I'm in Fairfield at the moment.
Okay, so, I live in Guilford. That means anything to you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm still fairly new to the area. I think I probably would know, but if I saw it. But yeah, my geography in terms of the local area is a bit limited. But it's how far are you from the city then?
Well, I'm 20 minutes east of New Haven.
Okay. Yep.
I pass your town every day when I take the train.
Yeah.
Fairfield stop. The express goes to Fairfield, and then it goes to Fairfield Metro, and goes on from there.
Yeah, Fairfield Metro is my stop. But yeah. Metro North is such a wonderful resource. Really is. Can get anywhere in the area.
Headspace, it's good. Sometimes it can get a little dicey.
Yeah, if you're taking it home at like 3 a.m., sometimes it's a little strange.
You never know if it's going to be on there, what they're going to be wanting to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Minneapolis is a very artsy community. I mean, I remember going there probably before you were born in the late 80s. I went to a national, there was this national organization of artist organizations. They called it NAO. And they had an event there. And we were like in the Henny Pen building and the Walker Arts Center. And I was just kind of blown away at how much art there was. I mean, Prince was still alive. He had his recording studio there.
Right.
My understanding was that because it's a very harsh, as far as the weather's concerned, such a harsh lifestyle. They go out of their way to make it really wonderful to live there. As far as the arts, it's like one of the things they do, and I just had a great time for about a week there.
Yeah. I haven't been back in a few years, so I don't know exactly what the current climate is, but there are a lot of wonderful things about the city. I think, there is a prevalent arts initiative. I think I even had one of my jobs, I had someone come in who was a bookbinder, and he knew of one of our centers for one of our kind of publishing centers there.
There's all kinds of everything.
Yeah.
You name it.
And I mean, the Walker's great. It was renovated a certain amount of years ago, so now it's kind of got two sections where it's incorporated the old section and then kind of a new wing as well. Mia's great. That was one of the places that definitely sparked my interest in painting specifically.
Nia? What is it?
MIA, yeah, it's the Minneapolis Institute of Art. They kind of rebranded to MIA. It used to say like the MIA, but now it's MIA with like
Right.
they rebranded it a little bit.
Yeah, everything.
But
Mamma mia.
it's a great museum. It's especially in high school when I was really drawn to oil painting pretty early, and a lot of high schools don't have a lot of resources for that. So there's a lot of self education involved, and so there's no better education than just going to a museum and trying to reverse engineer how someone did something basically. And Mia was really important for that, as well as printmaking. They had a whole wing of prints, which at the time I thought were drawings. When I found out I couldn't replicate them drawing, then that got me interested in printmaking, which ended up being my second major. So they do have a lot of stuff there. And then just in general living, one thing I never really appreciated while I was there, but when you leave, you realize it's how many bike paths they have. It's a really bikeable city. Especially in Connecticut, it's a little more difficult. A lot of streets don't even have sidewalks, let alone bike paths. And
Right.
um, Minneapolis, especially along the networks of the kind of main lakes there, you could kind of get anywhere biking in a fairly safe manner, which looking back, I miss a lot actually. But yeah, it's a
Well,
good city.
I mean, Boston is also a great arts community, right, for your undergrad work.
It was, and
What
oh,
Why
I'm
did
sorry. Go ahead.
you choose BU?
What did I think of BU?
No, why'd you
Uh,
choose it as a?
oh, why did I choose BU? BU was, I mean, when I visited, I really enjoyed it. I've always been, um, I'm definitely a city person, even though I'm in Fairfield. But in my heart of hearts, I'm a city person, and I remember visiting the campus, and it kind of just felt like I was in the city already. It's a long one. It's on Commonwealth Avenue, so it's like a long one street. It's a long campus. It's not sprawled out with a lot of greenery and stuff like that. It's really a linear campus, and I think that turns some people off. But I really enjoyed it. I liked the idea of being at a university where I could take um, other liberal arts classes along with fine art like specific classes and have a chance to learn about other subjects. It was just also they made a real effort to let me come there, helping me out financially, helping me out with um, you know managing all the classes and degrees I'd like. And so it was nice. I think also the art school there was it's a smaller community versus an arts only university. Everyone's there for art, so I know there's some art schools specifically that I've had friends go to where the culture is kind of uh, overly competitive to a point where it kind of creates a toxic relationship between students, and I didn't want that. So I think it just was a nice balance of a lot of different things.
Right. You talked about the printmaking being your second major. That's pretty historically that's really the relationship. I mean, most painters made prints as a way to uh, make money. It's like you
Hmm.
can't sell a painting. You can sell 100 prints of a drawing of the painting or whatever it was,
Right,
and
right.
that's I
Yeah.
remember.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, I remember in my undergrad, folks taking, I think even in graduate school, where every painter had to take printmaking as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, especially historically, obviously the famous like Rembrandt 100 guilder print just being that large and that expensive, and yeah, I would definitely the practice of engraving after a painting was incredibly prolific for a long time, and even between maybe the Eastern and Western world as well, for sure in the 1800s with um, the influence of Japanese woodblock printing on like Van Gogh and the Impressionists and stuff like that. Just seeing that come over and the effect that it had back onto painting after a lot of years in the Western world of just being a byproduct of painting uh, to sell more kind of copies of the painting as you would. But yeah, I mean, even I think a lot of the painters I was already drawn to had a really strong printmaking practice. Goya was one of my favorite painters for a long time. Um, the Disasters of War, Los Caprichos. He did a lot of printmaking work. One of the first people that got me into artwork in general was Kathy Kollwitz, who was only a printmaker. They go really well together. They go. A lot of printmakers will recommend monotype for someone who paints as being something similar, but I was always drawn to etching, and it seems like that has a strong connection as well, because even the prints that you're talking about, mostly engravings, which is along similar lines. It's a wonderful medium.
When I talk to my students about in the history, I explain that in the old days, an artist might sell you the painting, but you would not, unless you paid extra, you did not have the reproduction rights of that painting. So a painter would sell you a painting. Rembrandt was kind of famous for going back and going to some collector's house, grabbing the painting so that he could draw it and then copy it even. I mean, in Rembrandt's day, you actually, you would copy other people's painting. And sometimes the copies of his paintings sold for more, depending on where he was, whether he was in favor or not. Copies of his paintings during his lifetime sold for even more than his originals. But this idea that you did not have the reproduction rights unless you paid for them, and now that's kind of changed when you think about the fact that, like, let's say the modern owns a Warhol soup can and photographs it and can put it in their books. Though I have seen on occasion that there have been recent issues. When they used to give out the membership cards, they would have works of art on them,
Mm-hmm.
and they found out that they had to pay a copyright for putting it on there. And I guess they figured out it was cheaper to just say MoMA.
Yeah, I assume if it's for a commercial intention, especially by like an institution, that there's still copyright in that sense. But yeah, I mean, just in a social media sense, you can take a picture of anything and put it back up. Yeah. Yeah. It's probably a lot easier when it's something in your collection too.
I miss it because they used to do stuff like this, where like the Met.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I have my. I should have my. If I have my wallet in the room, I have my Met card. I think it's got a Byzantine. What's it called? Why am I blank? Not a tile. What's the term I'm missing there?
Mosaic.
Mosaic is the word I was missing. Yeah. So they have one of those. So I think maybe when it's within your, especially when it's something, if it's something unattributed to a specific artist, then maybe you just kind of have the public domain with that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Open domain or whatever. Anonymous.
Yeah.
Anonymous. I tell my students, the greatest artist of all time, Anonymous. And then that joke that, well, Anonymous was a woman because women were not allowed to be artists during certain periods of time.
Well, in many cases, in many anonymous artists, I'm sure that's right on, hitting the nail on the head with that one. That's for sure.
Yeah. So you kind of already talked about what we usually talk about next, which is, finding LaGuardia or applying for the LaGuardia exhibition. So what did what's the process now for? Because some of the folks we've had on, Dina met them actually at art fairs and kind of knew their work. But in this case, what did you send in, like 20 images or something?
Something like that, yeah, around that amount. Yeah, it was really, it wasn't a long process. It wasn't, it's. I'm sure she has better stories with other artists that she's met at fairs and stuff. But yeah, I just found it on. There was an open call online, and I just, I sent all the images I could, and I sent more than I thought she was going to want, and she just said, give me everything you got. And I brought everything I could fit in my car and assumed I'd be taking a lot back, but no, they took it all, and that's great.
Oh, so you actually brought work in physically, and she made decisions based on the work itself, as opposed
not for the admissions process, for for getting, like, we had already decided we were gonna have a show based on digital images, but when I brought the work to, but she just kind of said, like, give me everything you got, and then I brought as much work would fit my car to install and make, and then she just thinking that probably she wouldn't need all the pieces, but they found a way to fit everything I had in the show. But no, in terms of her reviewing my work to decide whether or not they want to do a show, it was digital. Yeah.
And we're going to actually look at some of it in a little bit. We're going to,
Sure.
engineer Chris Pope is going to make some of it available. You can tell us, because I think you said some of the work you've sent is work that's in the show. Some of it is not in the show. So we'll.
Yeah. So yeah, everything that's in the show should be on my website under one of the years at least. I can help direct you to that. I sent some. I know you had mentioned maybe you wanted to go over some current in progress stuff, so I sent you some in progress images of stuff I'm working on right now. And then I did mention to Chris about I have an Instagram too that has some more process shots of some of the ones that are in the show, because the website just has the finished slides.
Yeah.
But so however you guys want to do it, I'm happy to.
Yeah. Well, first I want to
direct you as you see fit.
Yeah, I want to talk to you a little bit about your work and your process, because Chris
Sure.
already Chris is going to jump on and start showing stuff, but we're not ready, Chris. We're save it for the second half hour. But so you go to school, and I read the poster that Dina has made, which she started. This is a kind of a thing she started in the last year or so, is the signage, and with, I guess, an artist statement. Was that your statement, or was that something that Dina came up with?
I believe it was. She wrote it kind of. I think she based a lot of it off of stuff that I'd written. So it's she wrote the blurb that you saw, but I think it was based off of her reading some of my writings. At least my artist statement online.
Right.
I do believe my whole thesis book is on there somewhere as well. I don't know how much she looked at that or not, but I know she mentioned she looked at my artist statement that's on there. So
you were to talk about your work or describe it exactly. What kind of work do you do?
I think right now I definitely I started out very figurative. My relationship with the figure has been interesting because I've never been someone especially drawn to narratives, and that became an issue real quickly when I'd have figures kind of viewed almost in an abstract sense, and viewers would be incredibly curious about what are they doing? Who are what are their identities? That kind of thing, and that was never my interest. I think I've been drawn to. I mean the kind of cliche quote, but I always kind of agreed with it, was the Francis Bacon saying that if you could talk about it, why paint it? And I had a little bit of that, that I feel like painting a lot of times is an uncovering of something that I don't really know how to express or articulate in a coherent way. I'd say that kind of developed into me hoping to rethink the figure in a more abstract sense, visually as well as in approach. I got really I got drawn to certain philosophies through I became very fixated on certain meditation paths and reading certain poetry, and I kind of got into certain mystical, Kabbalistic sense, but a little bit of Eastern thinking as well, and especially yogic traditions, and even some New Thought psychology, and I got really into thinking about. I got into poetic representations of the infinite in some way. So I was really interested in William Carlos Williams' Spring and All. He had a very specific image of an agglutinated soul that would kind of absorb everything from the earth and kind of destroy it, and then split it off and just redo it all over again, kind of perpetually, just forever. And so that kind of became an image for me that I jumped off of. So a lot of my work has a lot of figurative and landscape kind of elements that kind of are in a sense of either joining or separating. And I felt like that embodied the idea of the infinite in the sense that you can't tell if something is splitting or joining. And it also is a representation of dualities in the sense of opposites being joined by their separation. Like something is equal to its opposite because it's created through the boundary between them. Like without that boundary, we wouldn't concept of two things. So they're actually created by their opposition and therefore equal to their opposite in some form. So that's kind of the image that was constantly throughout my thesis work and even for the first year or so post-thesis work. So it makes up a lot of the paintings, especially in the shows. Some of my current work, I'm getting a little bit back into just viewing the figure, but I still am interested in kind of an all-over composition in a de Kooning-esque kind of way. So I certainly, even with the current work, I have a lot where it's just heads all over the whole thing, and I'm trying to make that work in some as a form rather than just as a scene, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think.
Do you have notions of graduate school?
I do. I probably will apply. I did apply to some places in early 2021, I believe. No, sorry, early 2022. Just didn't really work out. I think I'm going to apply again in the fall. I'm hoping that with a little bit more work post grad, that it will help me a little bit. Maybe it just will be a better time. So I do have hopes for that. I do miss being in like an institution where it's just we're all just kind of like a group of us making work. I think that is something that I enjoyed, even if even if when you're in it, sometimes you wish you had more time to just work on something solo. It's grass is always greener in some ways, but I think I've gotten some time to enjoy post grad, just trying to make work without too much of a time deadline and being able to dedicate more time to a painting than I would. And now I'm ready to kind of get back in and have some of the intensity of a structured program for sure.
Did you graduate? Some of your classes happen during COVID, or were you out of school by the time COVID hit?
No, I had a year and a half in COVID, I believe.
Okay, so that must have been peculiar doing your thesis show, online, right? I guess your teachers were looking at work online or whatever. Are you there, Henry?
A little bit less severe.
Sorry, I think you got frozen there, Henry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. It's just it's technology. Chris could tell me otherwise. Looks like you're frozen again. Chris doesn't know what to do about it. I'm trying to figure it out right now. Should I do a station break while we wait? Oh, Henry, you're back. Excuse me? You're talking to Henry or me? Yeah. It looks like he's frozen again. Should I do a station break while we're at it? Maybe you have to type something in there or something, send him something. Yeah, it's 1:25. The show is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez. And we don't know what's going on right now. Our guest is having technical issues, that we think. He's breaking up. And right now we don't have any audio or video with him. We're hoping our chat goes through to him. Did we tell him to open up the chat, Chris? Okay. And our guest actually today, maybe I'll pull that up while I'm sitting here saying this, is Henry Louris. And Mr. Louris is currently exhibiting his work in the LaGuardia Gallery of Fine Arts. And we want to give special thanks to Professor Dina Pizzarello, director of the LaGuardia Fine Arts Gallery, for helping us produce this show. So actually, Chris, while you're waiting for him to come back, why don't we take a look at the paintings or start pulling up paintings? Is that Or you want to make sure, see if he's going to come back first. So we had some technical difficulty. Our guest, Henry Louris, got knocked off his internet, but we're on his hotspot, and hopefully it'll stay hot for the second half of the show. I've already done the station break, Henry, so we can move right into looking at some of the paintings.
Sure.
What do we do first? Did we want to pull up the Instagram to look at the stuff that's in the current show?
Oh, the stuff that's in the current show should be on the website too. I just add more process photos of it on the but we can start on the website if you feel comfortable with that. It might be easier.
Let's go on the website, Chris, and we'll be able to see it on the screen here too while we're talking. So I don't see it yet though.
There we go.
So where would we go to see some of the work that's up right now?
I'd say most of the work that was had to do with the stuff I was just talking about is going to be in 2022 and 2021 under painting. If you hover over painting there.
Yeah, 2022. Wow, you got a lot of stuff, huh?
I have a lot of years back. Yeah. This is not.
All right. So any of these in the show? Henry? Since the show wasn't up, didn't have the opportunity to see it beforehand, so I could talk about some of these things. Some of these, I mean, the ones that are in the show.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, jeez. Okay, I'm really sorry.
One of these are in the show.
So in the 2022 tab, I have. Are you in 2021 or 2022? Sorry.
2022. You can't see the screen right now.
Oh, it looks like you're in the 2021 one right now. That one. The color spring, that kind of pinkish one with the head of like the animal head at the bottom, is in there. The one that's called Flower 3, that's kind of blue and brown and white, is in there. Let's see.
Well, there's one of those that you talked about with all the heads in it.
Yep, that one's in there as well. Yeah, that one's in as well.
So Henry, talk a little bit about this painting.
Sure. So I've been inspired by the work of one of my favorite contemporary artists. His name is Vincent Desiderio. I think we have a shared love of de Kooning's all over compositions, namely Excavation and Attic, particularly the calligraphic all over compositions, that period of his work. And I had admired how he had tried to incorporate representational figurative painting into that mode. Kind of, it was a rare example of kind of what I was talking about earlier, where someone was looking at the actual building of the figurative form in a metaphoric and abstract way, where it was actually the building, how viewing the figurative form, like the actual method of painting it, what that says in context versus just a narrative of figures together. So I was interested in that. I'd been seeing all these photos of a group of moths or butterflies, I can't remember, with like how the light would cast over a large group of forms like that. And so I was interested in doing that with a bunch of heads, kind of paying homage to both Desiderio and de Kooning, and thinking about also those groups of moths that I'd seen. And so I also thought it would be an interesting challenge to just figure out how to portray like a light falling over a mass of forms like that. And as you mentioned, the Agnew Clinic, a lot of the Aikens paintings, I think I'd look at, I don't know if it was the Agnew or the Gross Clinic, which one I'd looked at the time, but I was looking at that while I was making this. I am a fan of Aikens, at least as a painter. There are stories about his personal life that are interesting that I don't know.
I just heard about that. I knew he had a thing for young boys, because there's like the watering hole picture. And I also understand that he was physically abusive to his partner or his wife or whoever it is. So. you know, but I don't know. Let's not get into his. Let Chris take us out and let's take a look at in the 2020. This is 2021, right? So let's look at 2022. The paintings there, so we can get a look at some of those. Let's see if there's one we want to go deeper in. So here we have a figure. I'll tell you something. Let's go look at those figures there, Chris. The top right corner image of the young girls. Dina is a big figurative artist. Like, she teaches our life drawing class, the figurative class, because we have drawing 1 and 2, and then the figurative class. And she does these huge drawings with them. And so I think she has a thing for figurative, even though you're not a classic representational painter. You're more abstract in that sense.
Yeah, but there's a view. I think for most even classic representational figures, I think there's just a collective appreciation for the form of a figure, and is a certain. I think it's easier to bring a certain attention to detail in observation with a figure that sometimes is harder to extend outward. And I definitely think for me, what helps me paint other things is to try to paint them like how I would a figure, because then you start to, because a figure is really easy to simplify and appreciate the simplified shapes and then build kind of from a foundation. Whereas I think when you're painting maybe a landscape or something out in nature, it's so easy to get lost in the details right away. Or just the, forgetting like the greater picture. So I think with representational work and abstract work, and even painting other things, if you come from once a figurative painter, always a figurative painter in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So what's going on in this one besides the? Obviously there's figures. There is no narrative here though. It's just
this one. This one was a little bit of just a genre piece. I had been making a lot of the longer form abstract work, and I wanted to kind of just get back to doing a figurative piece. I think in continuing, I think there is connection with the head painting that we had just seen, in the sense that another inspiration for that head painting was Goya's painting of him and Dr. Arrieta, who is like a doctor that saved his life, and he made a painting to commemorate him. And that painting, I saw that a lot when I was a kid, because it was in that Minneapolis Institute of Art. And it's just a painting where the doctor's kind of holding him and giving him something to like nurse him back to life. But then for some reason, he puts all these strange heads in the background, almost as if they're like, I don't know, some kind of death spirits or something that were trying to take him. But they always kind of had a sense of being a marionette or something. Kind of, there's a lifelessness to them. And I think that was, I always saw them as marionettes. And so the kind of idea of like marionettes or bobbleheads or something always kind of stuck with me, like a kind of figurative form that felt kind of dead from, like something that's dead that kind of feels alive, or something that's alive that feels kind of dead. Similar to if you're in a museum and you see a really large sculpture, you still kind of feel the intensity of a human presence, even though it's just stone, So these were just like a bunch of bobbleheads or marionettes. I put a little like stick behind them as if it was like the bar that someone would use to hold them. It's not an incredibly complicated piece, but it's just an image that stuck with me for a long time. I also leaned into that because I started a figure and the head was really large, and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna make them kind of like bobbleheads or something. So the title is Bobbleheads, I believe. So it's nothing too complex, but it's just an image that I've been fixated on for a long time.
We got a couple of minutes in this section. Is there one other painting you want to talk about from the website that's in the show?
Maybe the one right next to it that kind of looks like a coral reef, or with the blue sky in the background. That's one where I would actually, if you do have the Instagram pulled up, that could be one, because I have the progress of that one is similar, because it started out as like a wall of heads like the other one, but I didn't want a wall of heads, so I kept I wanted to start at one thing and then shift it into something else. So I started as a wall of heads. I just would paint like heads over and over. Yeah, it's right there. If you If you scroll through the cycle,
Oh,
if it lets you,
Chris is
maybe it won't.
to you're gonna have to sign in.
Oh, okay.
You can't. You don't want to. You can't.
Ah.
Are you not an Instagram? I guess we can't.
Oh, that's not a problem. It's not that big.
Maybe you can make the screen bigger by hitting Command plus, or whatever it is.
Oh, maybe. But it's a little folder that has other images. But basically, I was just going to show. I have a picture when it started, and it was just a similar painting where it's just heads all over the thing, and I wanted to pull them into something else, like just use their structure almost as if I was building a structure out of a bunch of skulls or something. So it kind of became this Mount Rushmore-esque thing that's along the similar line. That's okay. I'm sorry. It's I think you get the sense from the other painting anyway. It's not that important.
Well, we moved into this part of the show where we talk about the future or next things, and you said you have some pieces that you sent us, things that you're working on now. So why don't you open, Chris? Some of these, Oh, you do? Okay. So take a look at some of the things you're painting now.
Sure.
I always ask more of.
Oh, you got the. Okay, yeah. If you click that arrow on the right, should have some process shots there.
Yeah. After all the work he did, he wanted to make sure we.
Yeah.
So you paint with the canvas unstretched?
A lot of times, yeah. So you see how some of the heads are showing back there, and it's starting to become a rock-like form. If you keep going back more, it should be, yeah. If you're using the right arrow, should go back. Eventually, should hit one where, yeah, it's like all heads there. So it's kind of a similar thing there. It started out as a whole different painting that was supposed to be like one of there's a church in Venice that when I did study abroad that had all these like specific monuments just next to each other to different people. So it started out being something like that, and then I just painted heads over the whole thing and wanted to kind of excavate it into something rock-like. But I thought it would be interesting to show because it looks different at the end, but I'm thinking the same way through all of them, if that makes sense. Yeah, I'm sorry, you were asking me a different question before that pulled up.
I was thinking we'd move on to the new work.
Yeah, of course.
You're doing now. So if Chris
Sure.
could open up a couple of those files that you sent that are things that you're working on now.
Yeah.
Does it feel like a transition, or is this more you're kind of just doing a lot of the some of the things you've already been doing?
I have one that's also of a large group of people, so that one is feeling similar. I have one that I'm starting that's of a large tree. I've always I had a lot of these drawings of trees I've been doing, so I wanted to start this really large one. That one's not exactly along the same lines. I just, I was looking at a lot of the Wyeth watercolors with the. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying. I'm waiting to see if Chris can open it.
Oh, sure.
Wyeth watercolors.
Yeah, I don't know if you know a lot of those. The Andrew Wyeth watercolors of trees, and I think a lot of them have like, what was the model's name? Olga, I think is the one that he always painted. But he had a lot of these like gorgeous watercolors of these kind of gnarled bare trees, and I think one thing that I've really appreciated about Connecticut when I started living here is just the trees here are different.
Here we go.
Yeah, so that's a big. I'm painting it over an old painting from college that's more along the lines of what we were talking about. So that's why you see a couple, like all the red is that old painting. It'll be covered eventually.
Right.
And so some of those heads that are there are old, but yeah, I have a big. I think I painted out some of the branches to get some of the sky in, but once I get some of the sky back, I'm going to paint a lot of the branches back in, and I kind of want to explore a similar all over thing with all the branches.
What did you say that the trees in Connecticut are different? How so?
I don't know. It's just a different quality than they were in Minnesota. I think there's a wider variety. I think that a lot of the neighborhoods in Minneapolis were really integrated into the city. So although there were a lot of like parks and a lot of greenery along the lakes and such. There isn't a lot of forest or a lot of anything like that. And I think Fairfield, I think it's Trumbull that we're really close to that actually has a lot of farmland. So there's a lot of like um, a lot of the nature seeps into the suburbs of Fairfield that didn't exactly in Minneapolis. In Minneapolis, it's not like it's New York or something, but it's like a lot of the greenery was, large lawns or parks or something, which is different from um, around here. I don't have more of a nuanced take than that necessarily because I don't actually know that much about trees.
I was saying you're not an arborist.
No, I'm not an arborist now.
Is there another one you want us to look at? Is there another image?
I mean
that's
that's an example of kind of me doing a set like more continuity. That's something similar to the ones that I was showing. This is actually maybe even more indebted to the Aikens crowds. It's gonna be eventually. I mean, I'm just getting the drawing in and just starting to lay the paint into it. So it's not. It has a long way to go before I can really kind of construct the scene out of it. But eventually, I'd like it to be something of like the middle section of an airplane when you have a large international flight and you have the 3 sections of seats. Right. This would be kind of the middle section there.
But this is a canvas in front of another canvas.
So yeah, both of these ones are stretched. A lot of times I've worked on unstretched, but both of these canvases are stretched. So yeah, behind it is the same tree that you saw earlier. This is a bit more of like like studio shots, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, the unstretched stuff, I think a lot of it was just that I wanted to, sometimes I like to figure stuff out on the canvas. I'm not much of a, there's a little bit of drawing here, which is actually more than I do sometimes. And even that, it's not really it's a very kind of scrawled drawing. It's not like, most of it will get changed. But I'm definitely, even with mixing, I'm not a huge pre-mixer for palettes. I definitely am a reactive painter. I like to respond. It's hard for me to plan a lot of stuff, which is sometimes becomes obstacles in printmaking specifically, because it's very much process based more than painting needs to be, at least. Of course, depends on the painter. But yeah, so for the unstretched stuff, sometimes I just wanted to get something tacked to the wall and just go, because otherwise I would overthink it and then it would take too long. And I think a lot of time I just want to get the time in. But it did come back to bite me for this show, because a lot of them were irregularly shaped, awkward dimensions, and so kind of getting them all stretched was a bit goofy. And so for these ones that I've started since, I've tried to be a little bit more intentional before I get into them.
All right, we're starting to run out of time, so
of course
I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about anything you feel like you didn't get a chance to talk about. Also, or if anybody you want to thank.
I want to thank Dina, of course, and all of her students that are part of her internship program that loaded all the paintings and installed all the paintings and had to deal with my kind of goofy stretchers. And it wasn't the most professional job on my part, so I am really appreciative to all of them who did it. I think specifically one of the days that I brought my family over, one of our students named Isaac came and showed us around, I believe. And he was incredibly kind, and everyone else that I met was incredibly kind as well. So I want to thank all of them. Of course, just my family helped me prepare a lot of the paintings, so I'm grateful to them as well. But they know that already. And otherwise, I'm just really excited. The paintings and the drawings and the prints are all up. It's rare, I think, for someone my age and for my level of experience in terms of showing experience to be able to have a solo show. It's not, you don't come across it every day. Usually you're doing an open call to some group show of 30 people, and you're lucky if you get one like 8x10 painting in. So to have all my big paintings up is pretty special. So I'm just really stoked that they're there. Yeah. And
yeah, we're pretty this is something we don't usually talk about on these shows, but the gallery itself, the history of the gallery is we're quite fortunate. You'll go to a lot of colleges, you won't necessarily see art all up on the walls like this. You usually see a very kind of antiseptic thing. So years ago, one of the guys who started the program, Bruce Brooks and Gary Vognitions, I don't know if you met Gary when you were doing anything there, but and Helmut Epic, who's a longtime tech for us in the art area, you know, they've grabbed walls and put stuff up. And I mean, those atrium cases, I think, I don't know who purchased them. We used to have the cases in the entrance of the M building, but we've turned those over to La Casa, which is our Latin and Latinx studies center here at the college. And, you know, there's a lot of the walls, obviously, we also have to share with the archives. We're quite fortunate that we have a lot of art on the walls. A lot of it is student work, but the Dina, you know, has, you know, done a lot of work to bring in artists like yourselves from outside of the LaGuardia community. And but the thing that excites me the most is, like you said, working with the students and giving them a taste of what it's like to hang shows. So, you know, if it was difficult, good. They probably learned something in the process.
It's a great program for everyone involved because we outside artists benefit, and I'm sure they benefit, or I hope they do. And obviously, she really enjoys what she does. It's incredibly prevalent from the second you meet her. So it's great. It's great. I was so happy. I mean, I really I'm so happy I stumbled across it. And I'm also, I mean, speaking of thank yous, I want to say thank you to you for having me on. So, and thank you, Chris, for dealing with all the financial difficulties and everything. It's great. You guys have a wonderful institution. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, thanks. I do this to Chris every week, so you should just watch the show regularly and see how I torture him with asking him to jump through hoops.
It probably helps. It probably helps when the guest has better
internet. Thanks to our engineer, Mr. Pope. But we're almost out of time. We got a little bit more music to play. By the way, sure. I picked Yes only because I started when I was reading all of these things. Somehow, in your descriptions and Dina's description of you, something about Yes, cyclical, or I can't remember what it was that triggered it.
Oh my God, that's actually, it really is amazing because it's one of those things that's an incredible coincidence because I've been listening to a lot of these lately. I put I've been painting to, I know it's incredibly nerdy. I've been painting to Starship Trooper especially a lot, which is I
was looking. The tough thing about Yes is finding music that is less shorter than 5 minutes because we don't want to overwhelm the show with music.
Right. Although that is fitting because most of
I went to Fragile. That's why I went to Fragile. Because I knew it's Fragile is chopped up into sections where each of the performers got to do a little. So you saw Jan Anderson opened up the show, and now we'll close with Chris Squire's famous bass riff, The Fish. But I want to thank everybody who watched the show today, who listened. And I want to thank our guest today, Henry Louris, who is currently has work on view here in the LaGuardia Gallery of Fine Arts. Always our special thanks go out to Professor Dina Pizzarello, who is the director of the LaGuardia Fine Arts Gallery, for helping us produce this show. And thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And Mr. Pope, please take us out as we came in.